the experience that we have of birth is the consequence of all of the aggregate choices that we've made. But it's also, I mean, there are just so many endless variables, and in the end, it is an inside job. And
Mm.
yeah, I don't know if we can ever quite. Um, there's so much that we don't have access to knowing, and then also I think that we create the experience that we end up experiencing through choice. And it's an endless paradox. It really is. I mean, I had quite a I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't a peaceful pregnancy that I had with my youngest child, whose
Mm.
birth was complete bliss. But I also can't deny that there were elements in retrospect that there were parts of my experience of pregnancy that I can see now did open certain pathways and
Mm.
give me certain insights. So I think it's just that life is continuously revelatory and mysterious and wonderful, and we do really only get to sort of figure it out after we've been through these various experiences. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really have anything neat and tidy to really say about that, but I certainly don't think it's a question of just have a really wonderful, peaceful pregnancy and then your birth is going to be a certain way. I think it's much more complex and wavery, and birth ultimately, I think, it is a spiritual experience.
Mm.
It's we can never separate the the physiology of birth even from our spiritual, psychic, soul level state of being leading up to it and at the time. And I also believe at this point that one of the greatest gifts that we have been endowed is free will, and is the option to always choose our state of being in any given moment. And so that also is a little bit of a variable in a way, because it can be tricky in the moment to to allow ourselves to be fully aware of what that dynamic and what those array of choices are and how choice even works, which is what I've tried to
Mm.
attempted to explore in the book Portal. So oh my gosh, that's such a roundabout answer, but
No, I think it's
yeah.
perfect because it is a roundabout thing. And I have a
It's,
teacher. Do you know who Jane Hardwick Collins is? She's an Australian teacher.
I know of her, yes, and I've
Yeah.
had some encounters with her work, which seems wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she was a student of Janine's, so I think there's probably a little bit of, I don't know, synergy there. But she talks about the shamanic dimensions of everything, and how, and I'm curious to your thoughts on this because she also teaches that your personal birth imprint and then the birth imprints of your children play a massive role in how you mother them and yourself through life, and also how you mother the children. And it's been interesting kind of reflecting on that in my experience in relationship to my own birth and my children. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that particular kind of concept.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And, in my own case, I think that my very traumatic, very industrial, very sabotaged entry into the world as a baby has had massive impact on who I am and my work in birth and the way that I mother in, strangely, a very, very positive way. I'm so grateful for my terrible abusive birth experience, which sounds like a funny thing to say, but it's important to me to share that because
Mm.
I know so many women feel a lot of guilt and shame about the kinds of births that they experience. And I actually do, at the same time that I'm a fairly vocal critic of the industrial obstetric system, I also at the same time don't really think that we can ever get birth wrong. I
Mm.
feel like we we always have an opportunity to take the experiences that we have, dark and light, and make them into something beautiful. And I feel like I've done that with my own birth. I'm really truly grateful for the kind of birth that I had. But in terms of the way that my children have come into the world, each of their births, all 9 of my children have been born at home. So there are certain elements of the choices that I've made that have been very consistent. But in terms of the energetics of their birth, the relational dynamics, the specifics of the journey, they've all been wildly different. And I think that's on account of the very different choices that I've made, large and small, micro and macro choices. But it's also that birth is inevitably a co-creation between mother and child. And I think that we, on some level, on a soul level, that we do choose our parents. We do choose the time and the place and the body and all of the variables of how we enter this plane. And I see in each of my children the imprint of their birth experiences and some aspect of their indelible soul that was absolutely present from the very first moment. I would say even from the moment of conception. I know there's lots of different opinions about, when a soul enters the body and all of that stuff. But for me as a mother, I would say even before conception, I had a sense of the presence of my children.
Yeah.
And and apart from just the immensity of the birth process itself and how staggeringly mystical and transformative birth is, that moment of seeing your child's original face is just, it's so precious. And for me, there's always a sense during that initial encounter of recognition, of knowing this child in some cosmic way, some forever way. Yeah. And it's such a delight, really, to see our children grow up and to witness the way that they change, the many ways they change, physically and in all the other ways, but also to see that kind of core thread of self that I think is always there.